All right, my buddy, liberating truth, Johans, how are you, man? It's good to see you. Gosh, I haven't done a video to you, in a long time, huh? So this is a response to your video, based on, I guess that we're spurred. How would we translate the word spurred? By Brainouty's videos, dealing with translating of the Bible, and also I think it touches on the King James only version school of thought, which actually I was just talking about with Christ Keep the other day. He had a really interesting take on this. So language, I had brought up a couple. This is a fascinating topic, man. Just language in general is a fascinating topic, and translation is a fascinating topic. I brought up an example. Of a poem that my grandmother had recited in Spanish, and my grandmother and my mother and my aunt breaking down in tears, and at the poem, and then when I asked for a translation and it was translated into English, it wasn't moving. It had lost a lot in the translation. And then I talked a little bit about how certain things, this is not exactly what I said, but I was thinking along the lines of certain things adding a great deal of richness to a meaning. Things like cadence, rhyme, rhythm, sort of an internal poetry, sort of internal musical structure. I didn't mention that, but humor, puns, that can and word associations that exist in a language, which there may not be associated words, or may not be the same constellation of associations in another language, was what I was thinking. But I realized that those things that add richness don't necessarily go to the core meaning, the core information, if we want to use a kind of I guess a modern conceptual idea of information. They just sort of enhance the information. Maybe they help in the transmission of the information, or they help make the person receiving it more receptive to receiving the information. I'm thinking that they have a different purpose rather than the pure information itself contained in the statement. So in that sense, I agree with you, Johans, that we should at least be singing the same lyrics, or the correct lyrics, and whether we manage to get across enough of the poetry, that's, I think, a secondary matter, but I was it's such an interesting topic too, because I was thinking that, if you take, say, a sacred text, and then you then want to teach it, and then you go to a whole different culture where their language structure is completely different, that their structure of their language has a different, even a concept of time, different tenses, and where there aren't certain concepts in that language. A lot of the words that we use, some huge, enormous number of the words we use in English, probably something, I think, like on the order of 70%, I've heard estimated, come from the Latin languages. English, which was a Germanic language, just didn't have those concepts, and so the words were imported. We, borrowed the words, and we kept them. We're not going to return those words, so I don't know why they say we borrowed them. But in one language, a word will have a constellation of associations around them. In another language, those different concepts may not be constellated together, so you don't get kind of. Now, I don't know how much that has to do with the meaning of the statement rather than just an ambient effect, or I just don't know. But it's kind of interesting, what else was I going to mention? As far as error goes, the inerrancy of translation, I don't know if error in a sense is too limiting a concept. It's an important one, powerful one, critical one, but I'm thinking that there's some other word we want. I think that you can have a partial truth. You can manage to translate through sometimes a partial truth, but that doesn't make it false. Just like if you have a plane and all the mathematics that go along with a plane, triangles and etc., in a two-dimensional planar world, if you add 3 and you deal with 3 dimensions, it doesn't falsify the mathematics that are true on the plane. It just expands it, so that you get a greater dimension of truth. So even though a plane is just a partial cross section of three-dimensional space, and you're getting maybe a partial, well, let's say a partial representation, or let's use the word, well, I don't want to use the word truth, but a partial cross section. Even though it's just part of the whole, it's not false because it is part. Now, it is possible to lie by telling part of the truth, which is why we say tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It is possible to misrepresent by telling a partial truth and not the whole truth. But I'm not thinking of that in terms of translation, in terms of trying to translate, because I do agree with you that it's critical that translations of such important books be, as true as possible, as accurate as possible. Maybe I'm thinking of the difference between accuracy and error. I'm not sure. Accuracy kind of has to do with trying to approximate what's being said. Error, I'm not sure. Error. I have to think more about that. Man. I liked brainouty's video, because she was in her video I kind of thought of light, which is invisible, but I thought of light going through a prism and breaking it into colors. And I was thinking if we're only seeing part of the spectrum, a partial spectrum, when we look at the color blue. But that doesn't mean that we've lost red and that we've lost yellow. We're just seeing the beauty of part of the whole truth, which would be invisible to us if all the colors were combined back into light, full light. So in a way, seeing partial things can actually bring out more beauty and more information and more truth than the whole. And it doesn't mean that blue would be an erroneous translation. It would be just focusing on one band of the greater truth. What else did I have here? As far as language goes, words change in our language, and even the word tick. I mean, they've changed in my lifetime, but I can't think of a clear example. But if I look at the word liberal, like liberal education, the word liberal back in the Middle Ages, liberal education meant that you studied certain subjects. I think there was a quadrivium and a trivium, but you studied three topics, then you had four topics. I think you had grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and then the four that were more advanced were some sort of arithmetic, mathematics, music, astrology, or astronomy, what have you. But liberal then also meant broad, and it meant open, etc. Now that word has been changed. It's become a political word too, so it means a whole bunch of different things. And even when we go to interpret a document like the American Constitution, which is about only 200 and something years old, we actually have to go back and look at what the words meant at the time. What were the definitions of the word at the time, as opposed to today. We just can't read it and get the full meaning, So it is interesting. That's why lexicons are so important, even in one language over time. The way languages, one thing I was talking with Christ about, we were kind of lamenting, is that modern languages are so simplistic compared to what these languages were a few centuries ago. They've lost tenses and moods. Our entire subjunctive tense, our tense of possibility basically has been lost. Yeah, it's almost like we're becoming more and more limited, our languages in any event. So it's like we're in the age of lead when it comes to languages, and everything's been so simplified that we could say a lot less, and it's far less rich. It's almost like we're in a new dark ages. And actually, in the last dark ages, their languages were more sophisticated. How can that be? That this is actually worse dark ages? We don't think we're in a dark ages. I don't think they thought they were in the dark ages either. It's only a looking back and saying, oh yeah, well, that was the dark ages. we sort of pass that sort of judgment on it. In any event, I'm out of time, but I think I said everything I wanted to say. The whole idea of the Apocrypha and everything, that's kind of more like editing, isn't it? It's not really a question of error, it's a question of editing material. Editing's a whole nother topic. Anyway, thanks a lot, Johann. Talk to you soon. Brainouty, talk to you soon too. Bye-bye.